Hello, and welcome to Wyverns and Weirdos, the D&D podcast set in the World of Fierlor. I am your Dungeon Master, Darby, and joining me as always are Eddie, playing 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧, Mitch, playing Nerys, Joe, playing Alton, Jake, playing the Fishman, and Laura, playing Rue. Let's jump into it. So, where we last left off, a great many things happened, but I think I can pretty much sum it up with Rue contacted Janus's god and Nerys had a mental breakdown. So we left in the middle of Nerys pouring his heart out to 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 and Rue. Was there anything more to be said on that matter?
I think at that point it would have been quite late at night, and 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 was on his way to encouraging Nerys to go spend some time with Kara, who would have kept him occupied with many of the things that she keeps herself occupied with during the wee hours of the night when she cannot sleep. And I think after 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 sort of sends Nerys on his way, he kind of turns through and he's like, I am aware, as your captain, that was a lot, but as your friend, I hope that working with Nerys will help you figure out purpose.
Of course. I don't need to be entertained. I'm not saying that that's how I'm taking it, but people don't need to spend time with me if they do not wish to.
Trust me, lad, if Nerys doesn't want to spend time with you, he'll tell you.
Oh yes, he is very good at making it clear when people are not wanted. But I do feel very bad for him.
Don't, he'd hate that.
True, and yet.
In truth, I do see similarities between yourself and Nerys. You both don't seem to see a worth in yourselves past being useful, and I see more than that in both of you. So, hopefully, spending more time together might either amplify or short that out.
Rue doesn't kind of emote in any way because they can't, but they seem to if they were, they'd be just blinking slowly for a bit and just be like,
𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 kind of leans down to Ham and he's, did I break them?
Have a good night, Master 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧. I hope everything is well. Perhaps you should talk through Nerys about the items moved at a later date. You seem quite distressed about a lot of things, but I hope you have a good night.
I will, Rue.
Rue just sort of nods and then just turns without acknowledging and then strides back down deck. Ham would immediately kind of just shake himself up and then look around and just follow him with his little stumpy metal legs.
𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 kind of sits back down and swings his legs back over the banister and looks out to sea.
So, Rue, as you become dormant for the night, you don't sleep in the traditional sense, though you do have to lie or stand dormant in order to recover energy. And sometimes in this state, you do dream. And tonight is such a night. You find yourself in an inky, black ocean, just floating. And you see, appearing before you, an almost cube-like ooze entity with countless piscine eyes and long, winding tendrils. Every now and then you see a vicious, toothy maw appear in an almost silent roar, as what sounds like 1,000 whispered voices cry out at you. While it's hard to make any sense out of the cacophony, there is one word that stands out. Seek. And that is all you see.
Rue just wakes up with just like all their joints just juddering. If they could narrow their eyes, would narrow them looking over it. Not their sea stones, but someone else's.
Alright, so next day, day 2 of the journey. There's some light rain, some light wind, but not enough to kind of impede your travel. Is there anything folks do on the second day of travel?
Nothing in particular,
No?
other than duties.
Okay.
Nerys is gonna have a quiet one. And is actually gonna try and... because he was up a little late last night. Because he went to bed and couldn't really get to sleep despite all the noise around him. Both, like, the creaking of the ship to the talking of the crew. And ended up sort of shaping this water again that he pulls from the, just like the moisture from the walls, just kind of pulls it all into 2 small little globules and just kind of slowly pushes them just and kind of makes a shell of water around his ears to almost amplify the noise of his surroundings, to drown out any other noise that's in his head. And that's eventually how he gets to sleep. Then he wakes up and there's a small pool of water in his slippers, which is mildly annoying. So he's gonna get up, move over to his study. Everyone else is up and moving around and doing a bunch of other stuff. So, at this stage. So he goes there and pulls out a couple of books and he's doing a little bit of research. And then pulls out a couple of sketches of... very rough sketches that he took of Janice's room, and he stares at them for a period of time, and then he starts to think about certain magical capabilities that he has, and he just begins to ponder.
Yeah, I guess I'll say for Alton, I think he would not have gotten much sleep last night. He would have, I'll give him a level of exhaustion. He probably would have spent the majority of the night just working through various projects. So he would have been like taken apart his pistols, and he would have like really tried to work on a mechanism to reload them more efficiently. And he would have done like read over like a few like old medical journals that he has, looked over his doctor's notes. He also would have like penned a letter, unusually for him, in common instead of undercommon, sealed it, and then just kind of looked at it like looked at the sky like irritated, and just popped that away for later. So I probably would have woken up looking very tired as well as Nerys, and just potted around the kitchen, although thankfully without any hangover that Nerys may have. And eventually he's also going to seek out Rue. I don't know, after lunch maybe, that's when he has a bit of time free.
Rue would be, probably in their quarters, pacing. Ham would actually be kind of just like pacing around a little bit. He seems to be like chewing on like a leek, which Alton would probably then very contemptuously realise is something that he's set aside, one of the things he set aside for dinner tonight. But Ham just kind of just regards Alton with impassively, but probably to Alton would also seem like he's challenging Alton with his beady little eyes.
Rat is sitting on Alton's shoulder, and Rat kind of just makes like eye contact with Ham, like trying to like puff himself up for a moment, and then they scuttle and hide in Alton's hat. Rue, do you have a moment?
And Rue kind of just like stands up, stooping a little bit, and their like spindly hands sort of like wrap around the door frame as they step out and look around and then look down at Alton.
Oh, Medic Alton, to what do I owe the pleasure?
Well, that's, you said it, it's in the name. I'm here as part of my duties, since we just fought some bloody great beast.
I do have some capabilities to look after myself, but if you wish to discuss them, I am more than happy to.
Of course. But,
please come inside.
Thank you.
Rue kind of like does like a weird sort of gesture that you interpret means come inside. And then they sort of like with their long arms, they kind of just like take out the chair that they've shoved under the bed and then just like right it and then just push it towards Alton. And then just stand there looking down at Alton. And Alton can kind of see beyond like that, the very simple description of Rue's room. There's like, on the table, there's like more of this sort of like waxed parchment. And there's like another leak. And it seems to be like lying very carefully with like, a long like stem of another plant. And then like, a velvet pouch. And there's some twine somewhere, like it's trying to like, he's obviously like trying to figure out something. He just stares at Alton, slouching.
Alton pointedly does not take this seat. He just kind of puts one hand on it. Not wanting to make the height difference any bigger. So I didn't notice you took any damage, but is that the case? How's everything going?
Rue like kind of again seems to be like not oblivious. I'm probably making some assumptions here, but like to Alton's view might also seem like they're entirely like avoiding a particular issue. But I seem to be in sufficient condition. I did not get too much water damage or anything. I don't seem to be affected by that. Don't require oil like your guns do. They're called, correct?
Yes, that's right. This type is a pistol.
Pistol, of course. I've heard the younger officers talk about a different kind of gun. I think they were meaning muscles. I don't quite know why.
Yes, and no, probably talking about Janus or something. That tended to be a topic of conversation about.
Yes, that was where I heard it from. Interesting. I'm learning more every day. This is very useful information.
And Rue kind of just like without regarding Alton, like turns to the notebook that Tibble gave them, which then just like writes something down.
Right. Well, if you're not injured, there's no need to help on that front. Although I would say, even if you have some medical skills yourself, I'm still a senior medic on the ship, so always feel free to come to me. I will always do my very best to try to heal anyone.
Of course, I'm sure you will do your best.
Alton is like, kind of like, probably like puffing himself up even more, just at the tone of this conversation. Moving on from the topic of you perhaps being injured, maybe could we perhaps talk a little bit about you injuring fellow crewmates, maybe? Is that a common thing that's going to be happening?
Rue like mildly like hits their head on the ceiling and then just like sort of shakes their head out a bit, and then they tilt their head down, but like their eyes sort of like shine with like a brighter, bluer intensity, I suppose. If this was like a human person, they'd be like turning their guards just to one side. That's the impression Alton gets.
Yes.
I made a great character choice here.
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Right. Easy to forget about, so it must happen a lot then?
I would not... It depends on the length of time that you measure. It does not happen every day.
Great. Well, that's good to know for my job. I don't want to go around healing injuries every time someone walks in your general direction.
That should not be a problem. I would not... You should not worry about that. It is connected to magic, and I try not to use it that often.
Right.
Well, of course, unless it is required for experiment or healing, where I can... Well, if necessary, then, of course.
Okay, great. So not only is a tiny little bit of healing magic that's so useful in this world, but your healing magic might also injure the people? Does it happen every time you use any spell?
I did not say that. I have not been able to determine the cause. I have taken notes, but there seems to be no correlation. But you would understand. Healing someone who may die of sickness, it is a great cost to pay. And I have never intentionally harmed anyone. I believe.
Right. It would be very good to know a little bit more about what to expect from this whole magical nonsense. I mean, if it had been up to me, I would not have hired you. I'm up to here with weird, unexplained magical things and all these dangerous people on board, but Tibble here, the boss loves to bring dangerous people on board.
Ah, I see. You are right to be concerned, Alton. It would, after all, be highly unusual not to be concerned about an individual who can be potentially volatile, who could bring danger on board regardless of the cost, and considerable damage or loss of life, and who has no strong ties to their friends and peers, and danger in their past. Would you not agree?
Damn right. Might be a smarter one here.
May I remind you, I witnessed you trying to shoot a man's legs off.
That is a good point. I forget that sometimes the violence can, be a little threatening.
I would say the difference here is that I do not intend to harm.
But in the same time, I only harm when I intend to.
I don't know whether that's better or not.
That man, he betrayed me. From the group that I used to travel with, if you just let people push you along and they betray you, everyone is going to do the same. They're going to be seen as weak.
So they deserve to die.
Well, yes, although I didn't kill him either, did I? Also, he pissed me off.
I see. Well, you were very right, Mr. Alton. Mr. Tibble certainly lets anyone on board.
I can see we're just going to go along so swimmingly.
My apologies. Would you like an apple?
They kind of make me sick. Most foods I'm intolerant to.
I see. No, that is understandable. I will find something else then. Perhaps a tea you would like.
No, I'm all good. I prefer to eat stuff that I prepare. I do hope you know that despite everything between us, I will always do my utmost to protect this crew. I'm a medic and I'm going to be the best damn medic there is.
That is a noble goal.
Despite the fact that you're probably a threat to everyone, I'd like to keep it in mind that I want to keep you alive. Well.
I want to keep everyone here alive and well also. And I, again, did not mean to do that. I hope you healed up well. I apologize.
Thank you for the apology. No, I've had much worse injuries.
Do you require any magical healing? There are limitations to what traditional healing can do.
It's true, and there's limitations to magic as well. No, I'll be fine in this case.
Of course.
He kind of takes a moment and just kind of rubs a hand over his face, looking concerned, I suppose, tired. And it's just kind of oh boy, this is not my specialty. Speaking of, right, you say that was an accident.
Yes. Unlike you shooting a man's legs off or attempting to.
Yes, exactly. No, that was intention. Yes, there's a big difference. May have heard that there might have been some other accidents in your past that resulted.
Did Nerys speak to you?
No, just, heard.
When? Was it this morning?
No, it's confidential. So you might have caused injury to someone, and that is bringing distress?
Almost immediately, again, when Nerys first confronted Rue about this, Rue starts it's very slight, just starts jittering a bit, and sort of the magic in between the seams in their armor just dims and like it's kind of like when there's a power shortage in a house and like the lights just start flickering a little bit like a haunted house, but they seem very obviously visibly distressed the second you start talking about this. You don't need to roll anything to determine that this is like a machine that is not working properly.
Nerys did speak to you then?
Right. Yes, that's a fair enough reaction. And someone spoke to me, yes.
There were some things alleged in the past that I do not remember clearly. Maybe something happened. I hope something did not happen.
Yes, I think he's probably, visibly, he's having a lot more difficulty trying to, say the right things and, be compassionate and, get into, the therapist mindset, which he is not one of, than, compared to when he was, speaking to Fishman. That's very difficult. Yes, some things happen in the past. They can impact the mind and then the body into the present, and then sometimes your mind and body just wipes it away as well, which is fun.
There was a storm. I believe that may be why I reacted poorly yesterday.
Yes, of course.
A storm happened that time.
No, that's good to know. There's some things with triggers from the past that remind you of that. Maybe next time perhaps you could try slow breathing. Maybe not. Actually, you know what? Is this remotely helping you, this conversation thing?
This is sort of a little bit hampered by the fact you came in and accusing me of many things, and then also being willfully oblivious of other things you've been doing. So I don't know about the overall effectiveness of this, but I appreciate your trying.
Fair enough. Thank you for the honesty. Honestly, yes, this is not my area of expertise, and not one for the bedside manner, so this... You can try to come for me for help in this if it matters. Otherwise, I don't know, go talk to the captain. If you're in acute distress, I can help very well, actually, as I am an extremely skilled medic.
Of course you are. I believe that entirely.
And Alton goes from being kind of flustered to being kind of pissed again. You have quite the attitude, don't you?
I try not to. I tend to vary, unfortunately, very wildly between being too cheerful and the opposite. I will get there eventually, I promise.
Good luck on your journey.
Good luck on yours.
And he just kind of leaves.
Alright.
He just leaves abruptly.
Yeah. Is there anything else for the rest of the day, folks?
I mean, I've got something, but I can't follow that.
I mean, if it's happening today, it might have to.
I will also say at some point during the day, Ham will find Nerys' room, and he will be carrying a little wax paper parcel that has a leek in it, a sprig of oleander, and the little velvet pouch with Janice's sea stones in them, and an apple peel that has been in some way, it looks like it's been tried to cut into some sort of shape, but you don't know what that is. It's completely indiscernible. Then after perhaps some contemplation, might start to realize, Ham has probably just eaten this. This has just come out of his mouth while he was carrying this little parcel.
Amazing. So Nerys will accept this and does spend probably... Nerys would consider a little too much time. Others would consider an unbearably lengthy period of time trying to decipher what this apple peel means. But then his allotted miscellaneous time will be up, and then he'll go back to the project that he was working on, which is trying to find weird and wonderful ways of utilizing his magic in the ways that those who made the magic did not intend. He's been thinking for most of the day about, well, a lot of things, as Nerys does. But one thought that keeps coming back is the fact that he won't be able to find any new information from Janice's room. Keeps thinking about that, and he's got these sketches in front of him that he did, which he's not a skilled artist. He is able to put out a decent image with charcoal, but he's not. The dimensions might be off, or there might be something a little bit. These are always intended just to be sort of references. And he kind of laments that he can't remember exactly what happened. And he thinks about a particular spell that he's used in the past to bring other people to the points that he wants them to remember from the past. He starts to think, is Nerys able to trick his own mind into visiting the memories that he can't remember? So Nerys sits himself down at his desk. He has these images in front of him. The little velvet pouch that was gifted ever so graciously by Ham, sitting just in front of the divining orb, which is slowly writhing in a greyish smoke. And Nerys begins to focus. He begins to try and penetrate the toughest mind he's ever had to penetrate. And that is his own. And now I'm going to throw it over to Darby because I have no idea how this is going to go.
So Mitch, you sent me a message this afternoon discussing this concept for a new spell, basically delving into your memory. So, obviously you haven't spent the time yet actually devising the spell and writing it, and putting it into your spell book and perfecting it to the point where you can do it consistently and safely, and all that stuff that wizards like to pride themselves on. But before any spell gets to that point, it must be experimented with. So what we're going to do is, I have a spell slot in mind that I think this spell would probably fall under, given what you described to me. And I think I have a DC in mind for an Arcana check to see how it goes. If you succeed, you will expend the spell slot and you will see what you want to see. If you fail, there might be some things that happen depending on the degree of failure. Fail by 5 or less, you might expend a higher level spell slot than you maybe necessarily needed to, but still see the result. Fail by more, you might expend the spell slot and not really get to see anything, and maybe even suffer some consequences for it. So, without further ado, please, Nerys Sololanti, roll me an Arcana check. A 13.
I'm not sure if he specified a level or not, but he is going to use blow a third here.
Yeah, no, you are going to blow a third here because you did fail by more than 5, unfortunately. Roll me, because it's 3rd level, 3d6.
That's a 13.
A 13. You take 13 points of psychic damage as your mind takes the strain of trying to read itself. You can make another attempt. However, the DC will be a little bit higher.
Would repeated attempts potentially be exhausting to Nerys?
With a significant enough failure, potentially.
We're gonna do it again.
Yes.
Oh, that's an 18. 26.
Okay, 26 is a success. So, mark off a 2nd level spell slot. And, yeah, so you see, what is the memory that you are trying to delve into?
Oh, I didn't think I'd get this far. So, Nerys is attempting to take himself back think, a week or so, to when Nerys and 𝗖𝗔𝗦 were investigating Janice's room, and he's not entirely sure how this spell is going to work, but the way that he is trying to shape it is he can essentially see what his past self saw and maybe try and pick up on any clues that he may have brushed over or any little bits of information.
You have basically 10 minutes that you spend within this memory.
Then I guess Nerys will spend the first 30 seconds of this 10-minute venture into his own mind just doing like a real, like, nerdy, geeky fist bump to himself. He's very happy that this worked. It seems that everything is where he remembers it was. He doesn't appear to be in any pain at the moment.
Yeah, if there's anything, Laura, if there's anything that you want to highlight.
A couple of things. I'm trying to think of what the specific things that one picked up previously. These are just things that Nerys notices. As usual, he sees this room again. He sees like there was like a very large shark tooth hanging off a nail next to the hammock, with some investigation that has some writing on it, 723597. Looking at the books in more detail, because Nerys probably thought that he could go back and read all of them. And like he still can, but like, you know, there are certain books which are like the obvious stuff, and then there's like books that are there for show. There are books on investigating lycanthropy, and even there's one on how to cure it all. The investigations into this. Earmarked words about an institution that Nerys has read before in Janice's diary. There seem to be, in the dust of the floor, there are markings that are very purposeful. Sort of seem to be all like converging into the arrangement of sea glass stones and like what seems to be like driftwood and wire sort of twined around that near the window. It does sort of remind you a little bit of like the different languages that you read in Janice's diary that you can't decipher. Those are some of the notes I would mention. If W has any specific things as well, feel free to butt in. But yeah, those are a couple of, I guess, things he notices. And when Nerys last visited that room, the light of the sea outside was again drawn into those sea glass stones reflected on the floor around them.
And it is probably at this point that you find yourself drawn out of the memory, out of the vision. And there don't appear to be any new ill effects upon your body.
It worked, Toad!
Anything else folks want to do?
I will just quickly cover that unless any of the others sort of actively come to 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧, 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧 spends most of his day prepping for when they will arrive and just doing general ship's captain duties and working with the junior officers and lower crew to just sort of keep things running while the senior officers are occupied.
All right. Day 3. Final day of travel. The day starts out a little cool, light breeze. There is an indication in the sky of a storm brewing at the start of the day, but your travel is mostly fine, and you reach, from all the information you've been given, the location where you determined it is best to set the ship to descend to the temple. Will only be probably half an hour's walk once you get to the sea floor to get to the temple itself. And it's at this point that the storm starts to pick up a bit. And who has a passive perception above a 15?
I believe Fishman does, but what's the time of day?
Probably around late morning, early afternoon.
Yeah, he'd be up. So yeah, he absolutely does.
Yep.
Alton's got a 16.
Nerys, do you have a 15 passive perception?
Not perception, no.
Rue? Nope. And 𝗖𝗔𝗦𝗧? Nope.
We didn't notice that there was like an eldritch horror just like living in their entire village.
Fair.
Tibble is the antithesis of my previous character.
Tibble and Rouge see nothing.
Alright, so, Janice, about 14 days after your capture, Silenon approaches you, flanked by Rort and Zardost, the Red Slard. Zardost is holding a sack in his large, long-fingered hand. We've reached our next stop. Armor up. You're going to need it. Zardost throws the sack to the ground in front of you, which clatters with the sound of metal. Looking inside it, you see your mithril armor.
Alright then. Good. Any more information about it, or...?
You'll know when you need to know.
Of course. Good. I'll get ready.
About an hour later, you find yourself, for the first time in what feels like an eternity, on dry land, trudging towards a destination you are unaware of, when a voice sounds in your head.
Janice! It's Loren! Nerys sent me. No one else will help. Are you in your right mind? We're trying to find you. Where are you?
And Janice stills, like, for almost like a moment, which would just be seen as like he's stumbling for a moment with his steps, but then he sort of continues to stride. On Loren's end, there's both a long and a very short pause, probably escalated by, like, the panic in her voice, I guess. Janice sounds like he's taking a lot of information all at once, and he goes, Red Phoenix, Loren. No one else will help. Nerys sent you. But then why didn't he? Yes, it's me, but I don't have long.
On his end, there would be a pause, and as the camera zooms across this line of sending this magic sent across the sea, we see Loren in her room on the Red Phoenix, Iric in front of her, spell scrolls fanned across her bed, as she sits there cross-legged with a little notebook in which she is writing his answers in shorthand in Primordial. And she pauses and she thinks, taking in what he said. And she picks up another scroll and recasts the spell. And as she casts it, she looks at Iric and says, "Time for another show." And then the message zooms across the sea as he hears with notable relief, "Oh, thank God. Yes, that, Loren. It's complicated, but Thunderbolt and I were the only option. Please, tell me all you can." And then there's a moment, and across the sea her brow furrows. Did Nerys fail you?
And again, anyone witnessing Janice, there isn't much of a shift, but there is another pause, and there, while it barely registers to Loren across from the sea, it almost sounds like a small exhale of relief that the previous message perhaps wasn't also the last. It's hard to discern. Sounds like he's trying to address what he can as briefly as possible. This isn't a new spell to him, I guess. I'm on the seas, tracked, magically hidden. You got lucky. The Seekers move around many plans, seeking potential. And then there's quite a longer pause, clearly weighing up addressing something, perhaps describing the land that he's currently walking across, the armor that he's been able to wear, the changes that have been going on, and instead he just finally says, and Nerys just didn't turn up.
There's another pause. Anyone seeing Loren would see genuine shock. She takes a second and she thinks very hard about what she has to say. She takes the final scroll and she casts it. "Lucky. We have few words left. No direction, no time. Is there anything you can say? I will not abandon you, Stormbreaker." And on that final word, there's the crackle of lightning, a shared storm between the two of them, and she waits for his answer.
There's a long pause again, almost like he's collecting the time he has left carefully, trying to find ways to make words count. He's slow and less emotional as another born of the storm, but for now there is no spark to be had. And Ren finally hears, "The Seekers have no leash, and they have plans. Some I must assist. Find one, and something to hide my signal. Thank you for trying." And then the signal cuts out.
Loren sits there, and for something she started doing genuinely with the intent to piss off the members of the Polaris, she feels a deep hurt in her soul for the waver in Janice's voice and the things she has just heard about the people who have failed him. And she takes those 3 scrolls and she takes her notes in Primordial. And she looks at Eirik, her fat little baby content on the sea. They abandoned him. They didn't just let him get taken. They abandoned him. You don't forget that easily. We have work to do.
And almost in a mirror of that, as we rejoin Janice and the Sin Seekers, Silenon says, "Halt. We are here. Start digging. We have work to do." So, Fishman and Alton, you notice, and Fishman, you're probably, as part of your job, spending some time up in the crow's nest, I would imagine.
Absolutely.
So, Alton, you would notice some disturbances in the water. Fishman, you would actually probably see from up in the crow's nest shadowy spots in the ocean that seem to be making their way to the edges of the ship.
Alright, like if there's any hint of like things coming towards the ship, he would absolutely ring the bell and get him.
Yeah, and as you do so, how many were there? Well, let's just start with a large, hulking, fish-like humanoid with 4 arms bearing a trident climbs up onto the ship. "You're in our waters." And that is where we're going to leave it for this week.
Quick question.
Yeah?
Do they look fish-like humanoid? Do they look like
Not
a
like-
different fish-like humanoid that we...
Yes. These are not like Fishman. You guys would have probably either encountered or heard of these beings. These are Sahurgan.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, there are some little clusters of Sahurgan throughout the Isles that aren't particularly friendly to those in the Pact. So, thank you for listening, everyone. It's been a very interesting episode. Some new magic, some rivalries cutting deeper, and a boarding party about to make this a little difficult for the crew of the Polaris. Let's see how that goes next week.
See you next week, everyone. Have a
Goodbye.
wonderful week. Let us know what you
Week.
thought. Enjoy. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Let Zoe in.
Let's She's been waiting.
Quick audacity, everyone.
Thank you.
The audacity.
The audacity.